some questions about the web admin. John is with Huntington County Community Schools. He asked some really good questions. We were hearing the same questions from lots of folks. And we thought, you know, what better way to do that than to kind of rehab the conversation that we had with John and the team there at Huntington. So we're going to reenact this. There's actually a little bit of new content here, some things that John hasn't seen. But mostly this is a reenactment. So we're acting a little bit, but what was an ad hoc conversation. Thankfully, I watched some Steven Seagal and Jason Statham movies last night, so I'm all prepped on the acting front. I know just what not to do, right? So we're all good. So we had a really good call kind of going through these things. So what we're going to do is John's going to ask these questions again, and then we're going to kind of step through them. I apologize that the slides have a lot of words on them, but they're a lot of answers. So, and we wanted to make sure to get these all kind of on paper, as it were, so that you have a copy of them. So let's go ahead and start here. All right, John, over to you.
Okay. Question number one, like the screen says, our team here at Huntington County is a little concerned about a plan or timeline to fully migrate off the FileWave admin. We've been using FileWave admin since the beginning. We're on year 11, I believe, with FileWave. And just the aspect of when are we not going to be able to use that, and when do we have to migrate to the web application and discontinue the use of the native application?
All right, great. And thanks. And the answer to this is that mostly yes. There's a timeline here. There's a timeline that we're looking at, and mostly discontinuing of the native tool. But let's talk about it kind of piecemeal here a little bit. So the first part, there is a plan to move administrative functionality over to the web admin. That's the destination. Like Vasily spoke about before, we're trying to move to cloud first. Obviously, the web gives us some advantages in being device agnostic, and obviously, you know, you can travel better with it, and the API functionality as well. We found especially that has really hit home for a lot of customers, what can be done with that API with automation. Over the next 18 months or so, this is really the primary focus for the company in general, along with kind of some of the back-end pieces that are more like the sausage being made that you don't really see, but some back-end refactoring to bring the solution up to date, to modularize it basically, to allow us to do releases that are more piecemeal, where we can release features for Apple or for Microsoft or for Google that are not related to the others. So we're trying to get to a place where we can do that, and this is really going to help us do that. So we're looking at least for the next 18 months where we're really focusing on this. Our intent as we move things into the web admin is to minimize, we can't eliminate altogether, but to minimize the impact of the changes as we move them, while also looking at improving functionality where we can, or at minimum, looking at the backlog of requests for enhancements so that we make sure in what we initially implement that we can then easily look to those additional feature requests in future. What we're really trying to focus on are, as Vasily said, complete workflows, or at least you know, we don't want you to have to do a 4-step process where step A is in the native admin and then step B is in the web admin, and then you have to come back to native, etc. So we're trying to make complete workflows, and I'll give an example of that here in a second. So the first release where we're moving, right, not in parallel, but moving functionality to the web admin will likely be after the upcoming release. So not the next release, which would be 14.8, but the release after that. And these are the things where we'll have some functionality moving. We'll be moving Apple profile creation and editing to the web only. We'll be moving DP profile creation and editing to the web only. We will support payload file set revision choice in deployments, which we don't do today. So it's kind of a little enhancement there. And then we're going to include an associations converter, which we're going to talk about next. And the point here when I'm talking about the workflows is that when we're working with, say, an Apple profile, when you go to create that profile, you need to be able to go ahead and assign it to devices, and you'll be able to do all of that within the web and kind of complete that workflow. Right. You'll find elements in our rough order of migration in the product board portal. And I do want to point this out. Vasily mentioned before that there's some additional functionality there. I'm going to break out of this presentation for just a second and show you that in the, and I wanted to remind everybody, when you go to help.filewave.com in the support portal, it links over to the roadmap and to our product feedback portal. This is kind of being updated right now, but the roadmap, when you link over to it, you'll see that now it's not just a recreated PDF, and I'm actually very happy with this particular advancement, but these are now not just labels, but if we look at, say, the native profile editor decommission, there's a detail page here too that gives you detail on what this change is and what release we're targeting things for. I will also mention just very shortly that we generally have 6 what we call swim lanes here, or teams, development teams, all having a different kind of function, but it breaks things out by the platforms here you'll see, and then kind of our core backend team that supports those platforms, our core backend team and core UI teams. But this is now interactive, which we're very pleased with. All right, and we're almost done with this slide, but there we go. Okay, so on the no part of this, where I said it was mostly yes, but a little bit no, we're not going to be rid of a native tool entirely. As we're moving functions over to the web, of course, we'll be removing those from native. But the tool that we have at the end of that is not just going to be everything that's we remove from the admin, and whatever's left over is the admin tool. There's going to be a new tool, basically, that's a native tool that's probably going to look at an incorporation of things like Faucet Magic and the more advanced file set / payload work that you can do in FileWave now, because obviously the native tool has some advantages over the web when it comes to that deep integration with the local OS. So a bit of an overview there. I know there's a lot of detail and a lot of words for a slide, but it was a really good question, and that's why we wanted to touch on it. All right. And I did forget to mention at the beginning, feel free to ask any questions you like. We're not going to answer them now, but we will hold on to those questions for the AMA session a little bit later. Next question, John.
Okay, next question we talked about, Tony. Will all existing file sets and associations made to our devices currently be available in the WebAdmin? Again, we've been using this for 11 years, and I've got thousands of file sets. It does not appear that to be the case currently, with associations now being called deployments. So if you could touch on that, thank you.
Yeah, and that's, again, a really good question. And yes, the associations are going to be made available in the web. And technically, they're not called deployments, although deployments is kind of the next gen version of associations. So it's kind of like associations V2, if you want to think of it that way. Some folks have started using deployments, but it's very much, awkward if you're using associations and deployments and having to move back and forth between them. So the answer is yes. There's going to be a tool available in the web to see associations. Again, in this release after next, associations will be visible in the web, specifically in a tool that we've been calling kind of an associations converter. And we're going to look at kind of a prototype of that here in a little bit. But basically, the point of that tool is to convert associations over to deployments, and we'll talk some more detail there. Even if you've never used them, deployments are more efficient than associations. Now, it's very, very easy in the native admin to, bring in a new app and then right-click on it and say create association and assign that to 4 different groups. But then later, when you want to manage that thing, you have to go find those 4 different associations and then edit them en masse to edit those settings. And deployments group all this stuff together, so there's really just one record. It's more easily found and more easily edited, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But it's kind of my pleasure always to present this material, but there's an army of people behind the scenes that are doing all the real work when I get to sit here and talk about it. And Marco, whose last name I'm going to mispronounce, but Lysixa, has done a really good prototype. He's one of our designers, and he's done a really good prototype of this associations converter. So we're going to break out of this for a second and go take a look at that. Right, so if we take a look here, so this is kind of a mock-up. It's kind of an interactive prototype. Normally we don't show stuff super early, but this is just really kind of dialed in and gives you, I think, a good feel for what associations to deployments would look like. So in this view in the web, you'll see that we have associations showing, right? And in the kind of detail view here, we see all of these different payload associations where we got payloads assigned to which group, what type of assignment is it direct, is it kiosk, etc. You can search in here to look for certain things, so it kind of makes it an efficient tool for doing that. And you see mostly we've got Chrome in here with a couple of other examples. We're going to specifically talk about the Chrome one, even though this is an odd combination. But in reality, what we find in most environments is associations can be very messy like this, where it may be a little bit of a surprise that you've got different versions of things going to different groups. But in this, we're going to look to coalesce all these Chrome assignments into one deployment. So we'll get rid of these, 12 or 13 records here and create from this one deployment, right? So we're going to go ahead and click on move these to a deployment. And then it gives us an option to see, kind of what we're doing with that. And I can't scroll, but I can go to the next one here. There we go. So in this, we can select what deployments we want to do. In this case, right, this would allow us to add them to a pre-existing deployment. So something I already have. And many of you, if you're doing file set groups and associating file set groups to kind of a high level manual groups in your environment, you're kind of doing deployments already, right? But in this case, we're going to create a new deployment from this. So when we click new deployment, you'll remember in that first screen, we had all sorts of conflicts where we had different versions of Chrome going out to all these devices. So this tool is going to warn you about those conflicts and say, hey, you have to resolve them before you can move forward. So in this case, we've got Chrome as the package that we're going to assign, and we've got the targets. Those all automatically come in, right? So we've got a marriage of payloads to targets, and we can, of course, edit it and add exclusions and such. But we need to deal with these conflicts. And the first conflicts here is on the options side of things. We've got a conflict, and it shows us, right, that we've got a conflict in how we're assigning this content, that 10 of the 12 associations are direct, but 2 of the 12 are kiosk, right? So we have to resolve this. How do you really want it to be when you create them? So we're going to do a direct installation, and that kind of resolves that conflict for us. We also had differing options on the timing. This we don't call a conflict exactly. We just kind of take the timing away. And especially as you convert it, you're going to want to pay attention to how you're doing timed things. But generally, if you're editing something you've already done, the timing's probably not too important now. So we also need to resolve the conflict on the payload. And that conflict is that there's no revision, right? We don't know which version of Google Chrome we're deploying to these devices. So we need to pick it, right? And in this case, we're going to just pick this default revision, right? So it's the same one. And that resolves that conflict for us as well. Okay. Now, when we resolve those conflicts, we'll get an option to preview what deployment that would be created. This is going to be tweaked just a little bit, so these removals and additions will actually just show as modifications. But you can see here that on the highlights that we've changed the association type to be direct. We've changed some timing options, and these revisions will show down here as modified as well. So we kind of get a preview of what the changes are. And if we talk about things that are added or removed, if we totally removed a package, like if we selected multiple things, it would show as a removal. And if we were adding something new, it's going to show as an addition as well. So once we're done with all that, we can go ahead and publish that deployment. And when we publish it, the associations will go away, and now we'll have that one new deployment, as it were. Right, so that's just kind of a general overview of what this is going to look like. We're still soliciting feedback on this, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it. All right, so let me hop back in here. So we took a look at that. Let's go ahead and hop into our next question, but it's a related question.
Will there basically be a clear and easy migration path for all my existing iOS, macOS, and Windows file sets? Again, we've got 11 years worth of things in there. Currently in the native FileWave admin application of the WebAdmin.
Yeah, and that's exactly, what this tool that we were just showing is for, right? So the answer is yes, there's going to be an easy way to do it, but it isn't just a conversion tool. As you just mentioned, John, you have 11 years worth of content, and what we see in almost all environments is that it gets really, really messy very quickly with associations, and most environments need kind of a hefty cleanup. And this conversion tool allows you to do that. So you could be able to filter in there and say, oh, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why am I associating it to this group, but not this group? Or maybe I can bring these things together and do an association, a deployment at a higher level with some, a little bit of cleanup as we go along. So it's both a little bit of a change, but also an opportunity for cleanup. And we're going to try to make that as simple as we possibly can. All right. And again, just on deployments, they're more easily found because there's actually a record for them that's a named record, whatever you name it, you can then search for it later. So, there are things to be considered for deployments, and this kind of leads into the next question, but we'll need to make decisions like, do we want to focus on deployments that are application based, or do we want to focus on deployments that are more destination based, where, say, we're sending something to sales as a department, for instance, right? So the deployments are more easily found. They're better overall content assignment tools, simply because there's some new tools in here that you don't have with associations, but we're also got a little bit of a backlog of some of the great things that you can do in associations that we're putting into deployments as well. So we've got both a today plan and a future plan for this that we kind of call Deployments V2 that's out there on the horizon for us. And then the last of the 4 questions that you had, John.
Basically, my last of 4 questions, my next question was, will it be training made available? Again, looking at the web admin, I as a user of the native admin for over 11 years, like, what is this? I'm a little confused. So I guess my question is concerning just training and sessions, and I'm not that smart, so I'm going to guess I'm going to need a lot of training on that, but just the things we do from day to day and our daily changing the web admin to our daily driver.
Right, and of course, that's a good question too, or if it weren't, we wouldn't have included it here on the slides, but it's a good question. We've heard that question from a lot of folks too. There's several options on the training front. The first, and sometimes it maybe can slip under the radar, is there's actually integrated help directly within the WebAdmin. When you're in the WebAdmin on any particular page, the little question mark that you see at the top, if you click on it, that's got targeted content for the view that you're in. And to Vasily's point earlier, he mentioned with Product Board, with this next big iteration of the WebAdmin, there's also going to be integrated Product Board portals for you to provide feedback on those particular views. So there'll be a feedback loop for, say, the devices view, a feedback loop for the reports view, etc. So there is integrated help directly in there. Generally, we try to keep that help very short in a, how, when, and why, and what kind of format for those questions. Additionally, we're updating Foundry content. We've wanted to do so for a while, but we've been waiting for the web content to kind of catch up, which it is, which means that we can now produce content that actually includes the web content. As we've got complete workflows, we're going to be building that. So that'll be free, of course, and you can get to that content anytime you like. We're also, Josh and I were talking over the past couple of weeks about doing maybe some monthly webinars, not super long, but like an hour with maybe a little Q&A afterwards that any FileWave admins can attend, right? And all those 3 options would be free. And then the last option on here is if you're looking for kind of custom one-on-one training, the PS team is also available. If you have PS hours either available to you already, or if you want to buy some, you can use it for that too. So if you want specific training in your environment, there's a paid option, but there's lots of free options too. So I do want to say thank you, John, for participating and letting me drag you into this. I really appreciate both your honesty and your questions and your forthrightness, and really appreciate you making the time to join us here today. All right. And I think John's muted still. So, but thank you, John. Now I'm going to go ahead and pass things over here to Andreas Gluck, who's going to